I'm going to not favor the idea of all four debaters answering every question, so that we can streamline it a little bit. But I want to move on to Nick Thompson, who until very recently was the editor-in-chief of Wired, which has a little bit to do with reporting on technology, but is now the CEO of the Atlantic. And Nick, welcome to Intelligence Squared, and we'd love to hear your question.
Thanks. And John, I would like to point out that I have never put an Aryan super baby on either Wired or the Atlantic, though actually such babies have appeared on the covers of both, twice on Wired and once on the Atlantic, but not while I was doing it. So no Aryan super babies on me. My question is related to something Amy said at the end, which I think is part of the crux of the matter, where she said, we can build the better guardrails, right? We can actually do it. We can come up with the rules that get us the outcome we want, not the ones we fear. So quickly, Amy, what is the ethical framework that makes those guardrails? And then Françoise, does that satisfy you?
That was a challenging question. And here's why it's challenging, because my definition of ethical frameworks are probably going to be quite different and nuanced than everybody else's. So I think that the easiest way to answer that question is what is best for the public good, and what is best for the public good in the very long term, with a asterisk that we have to be able to recalibrate as we go. And can we do that in ways that are divorced from politics? This is an incredibly tall order, and I don't have a how, but I do have an example. So Asilomar, a long time ago, was the meeting space for a really important conversation that with David Baltimore and some other folks that focused on two central questions about if we were to engineer things going forward, in what ways would that happen? And that really did, for a time, even till now, set some of those boundaries and guardrails. And it engendered a conversation, but also, some practical outputs. And I know that there's been some call to have and there might have already been an Asilomar part 2. But that's going to work in some countries. There are other countries where ethics and values are quite different. So I think the challenge here, to our opponent's point, is we have to figure out a way to promote coordination versus competition, which is going to be a rough thing to do.
Françoise, did Amy just do your work for you on that question, particularly
well,
her last comment?
I certainly liked her last comment about moving towards something that's perhaps less competitive and more collaborative. But in response to the original question, I mean, I'm looking for an embrace of diversity. And I don't think we hear that very often in the context of this debate, the actual embrace of diversity, that's a wonderful thing, as opposed to the ways in which we might use this technology to streamline. I also am deeply committed to the idea of collaboration rather than competition, deeply committed to the view of the common good, and ultimately deeply committed to the idea of social justice, which would involve the distribution of power. I do worry that in this area, it's too easy for those of us who are already vested in the discussion or the debate to, in some sense, curtail that. And this is too important a conversation for it to be limited to the scientific community, to the academic community, to the political community. And so my challenge is we need to find new ways to use creative technology to bring more people meaningfully into the conversation, which means that they get to shape the answers. And I don't think we've gotten anywhere close to that, because the few conversations that do take place are largely in very select groups, and ultimately very often we try to exclude those who don't agree with us. So this debate is great. We get to see people going head to head who have different fundamental commitments.